Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are finally getting back to the name of this series, I should say. I almost said video, but it's really more of the series name. We're finally getting back to the viewer contracts. Now there's a bit of a dearth of them right now, so if you want this series to continue, please by all means leave more contracts in the comments and we'll see what we can come up with. For now, we've got Werner von Kerbin with the low difficulty crude Mooner Impactor. That's an interesting one. I'm not exactly sure what that's intended to mean for a crude Mooner Impactor. So are we supposed to kill the Kerbal? There are no constraints for it, so I guess we can just kind of interpret this however we want. So the way that I'm thinking about doing this is by having a crude Mooner Impactor that would, like, drop things onto the Mooner surface, including in the end itself, without killing the Kerbal aboard. It's only going to be one Kerbal in case I mess this up, but we don't actually need to open anything. I'm going to do this one from scratch. So we're going to go with probably the Mark I lander can here for weight constraints. Now, is this intended to come back? Possibly. This is going to be interesting. So basically what I'm thinking right now is we are going to impact this into the surface as well as other things, but we could certainly have this be some sort of a soft impactor, right? So we have an impactor here that would be kind of like this. We could have some fuel on top, in theory. I'm just thinking about where we would want the engines to actually be located. We could have the engines be about here, like this. That should be enough to land us. We would have some small amount of fuel in this. I would want this ideally to be enough to return back to Kerbin afterwards. So probably not a T100, but we'll see what that actually looks like. That's 1100 Delta V. That might do the trick. So then from there, we would have some cubic octagonal struts that stick out kind of like this. I'm going to do another round of them like that. And then we would put in landing legs on here. So LT2 landing struts, maybe. Those might even be too big. We might even go with like LT1s. Yeah, I think that works. So then I would move these guys to be down about like that. Oh, I don't like the offset on that. Let's move this into local space and we'll just move these guys right on over. Let's turn off snapping and we'll just get them aligned about like so. And maybe move them up ever so slightly. So this would be what we would end up landing with, right? We may even want to have some like ejectable fuel tanks up this way. So that would end up being, this is going to be a really weird concept. That would end up being like a TD12 stack separator here. And then we would put in that like this, and we'd be ditching these tanks as we go. Now, we're going to be flying into the tanks. So I don't know about that. This idea is maybe not the best concept in the world. Maybe we would instead just bring a single T200 tank here. So I don't want to be sorting by mass. I want to be sorting by name here. I want to go down to the T200s. Hang on. I'm just going to do it this way. There we go. T200. And that gives us how much? Well, we're not enabling crossfeed here. So let's enable crossfeed there. That doesn't appear... Oh, it's because we're doing this incorrectly. It needs to go this direction. There we go. So with the crossfeed enabled, we can see that's 1,500 meters per second. Over moon, what's that going to be for thrust to weight? More than enough. So then we would simply have a heat shield down here. So we'd have a 1.25 meter heat shield that goes like that. I actually think maybe even a bigger heat shield. 2.5 is obviously too big. 1.875? Yes. assuming that that's not blocking the twitches, we could potentially, like, just move the twitches out a tiny bit like that. Now they have clearance. Okay. That shouldn't be a major issue. So then the heat shield would, of course, be for bringing us back. And then as far as actual returning goes, we'll need parachutes. So the parachutes would be something along the lines of a pair of drogues. That's in quad symmetry. I want this to be in dual symmetry. And we can turn snapping back on. So dual symmetry about like this. And then I'm going to do, I think, a pair of mains on these same sides. That would end up being kind of like this. I don't love the positioning here. So maybe we drop the drogue chutes down a little bit more or offset them a little bit. Or we do quad drogue chutes. And we put the drogues here. That kind of works, actually. And then we would drop these guys down ever so slightly so that they're not clipping. Like that. And then these guys can be dropped down to be about here, like so. This will definitely be fine for re-entry. The real question is, what about landing? I do want to put a hemispherical fuel tank on top of this for purposes... This is going to be way too big. A hemispherical fuel tank on top of this for purposes of liftoff. And then we're going to need our actual impactors, right? So this is itself going to be an impactor, although a slow impactor. But then we need to put in our actual impactors and our journey over to the moon. So we're going to call this Werner's Moon Impactor. There we go. Beautiful. We'll save that. And we need a decoupler here. Do we go with a TD12 here? Or a TD25? We might even go with a TD25 here. So a TD25 decoupler, like that. Yeah, that should function reasonably well. So what are we going to actually impact onto the surface? Well, it needs to be things that have some reasonable mass to them. I'm thinking like maybe empty fuel tanks. So we would end up putting in like a number of fuel tanks here. What am I looking for? I have these all sorted in a way that I'm not used to. I'm used to the default name sorting, I think. Yes, this is the way I'm used to it. Okay. So we would put in like a Jumbo 64 tank, but we're going to lift these empty. And these will be our impactors onto the surface. So I want to have that. I want to have a bunch of probably 8 coupled. Yeah. 8 coupled decouplers here. So side decouplers. Like so. I do want to have snapping on for this. Thank you very much. We would put them about... I don't love the way that that's doing that, but whatever. Then we put in additional impactors here. Now, these are all full right now. We want them empty. I don't like the fact that they're clipping together. So we're probably going to need to get some extra space here. Let's put in some spacers with modular girder segments. Okay, I hate the direction that this is going, but we'll put it in like that, and then we'll rotate it into position. Okay, that's the correct rotation. Now let's get it placed a little bit better here. We'll need to turn snapping off. There we go. And let's just place it something like that. And let's see what that looks like if we were to attach these guys right onto that. Much better in terms of spacing. Okay, so these fuel tanks are all empty. And we're going to be lifting them that way. However, I'm thinking about what if instead of doing it like this, we did it with smaller fuel tanks. This will be less cost efficient. But if we did it with smaller fuel tanks like this, that had decouplers. So we could drop a bunch of these, right? So then we would put in a decoupler here. So like a TD25 decoupler. And then we just duplicate these bad boys a bunch of times. So something kind of like this. We could even put in a couple of these decoupler fuel tank combos here, just to get that down like that. Now, I'd like to strut this together. Strutting would definitely be wise here. So we're going to strut them here. And we're going to do this for each and every one of these. We're going to strut them here. We're going to strut them here. We're going to strut them here. And we're going to strut them here. Then, each of these up top will be strutted in like that. And that should give us reasonable stability, but I'm also going to strut it from the bottom. Not that that's going to be amazing, right? But we'll strut it like this, and that should hold us when it matters. Now, I want to point out, this is going to be really hard to control. So I'm going to put in, on top of these, I'm going to put in, I think, SAS modules. I'm not going to put, like, remote guidance units. We're just going to put SAS modules up here. And then we're going to put aerodynamic nose cones. Not fuel hemispheres, like we normally do, but protective nose cones like that. So all of these are intended to impact on the way down, right? That's the way that this is intended to work. So we're going to need a bit of a transit stage over here. We're going to have to adjust our staging here quite a lot, I suspect. Yeah, our staging is going to be a mess. But let's put a bit of a transit stage in here. We're only going to the moon. So in theory, we don't need all that much. I'm going to put a Jumbo 64 fuel tank here. And I would like to strut these together from here in like that. Then I want to put in an engine here. So we're going to want to have something along the lines of a poodle. There we go. And then we would put in a TD25 decoupler. And we're going to need to lift this whole thing up. Okay. Something like this. Then we're going to need something... Well, we're going to need a lifting stage, right? So we're going to go for some big ol' orange tanks here. There we go. We're going to go into our engines, and let's see what our lifting capacity is with simply a mainsail. It's going to be, I think, kind of bad. 0.78. That's actually not as bad as I was expecting it to be. So we can definitely asparagus stage this out. We would go for, like, quad staging here, or maybe even a bicoupled stage would do the trick. I think this would. So we would just attach this up over here, like so. Put in another pair of big orange tanks here. And we'll lower those down here in a moment. So something along the lines of this, we'll lower that down to be about there. Grab a mainsail. We'll need to be in place mode for that. And let's put in a hemispherical fuel tank on top of that. If I can get it to snap to the right point. There we go. And we'll just do something kind of like this, in theory. I'm going to lift these guys up to be about here in terms of height. That should be okay. How's our thrust to weight here? 1.23. So it's still a little on the low side, so I'm going to quad couple these then. And we'll just do something like that. Maybe lowering it down ever so slightly. I would prefer these outside ones to be slightly lower than the inside one. Yeah, that'll do. So something along like this, like a almost... This isn't exactly a Saturn V design, but, you know, it's a kind of similar sort of engine configuration. We're going to strut these together for sure. That's going to be vitally important. We'll strut them together on the bottom and on the top, but I'm going to strut them up here for increased stability on top. Looks good. I don't think we'll need any tail fins. We've been completely okay without them for the time being. So in theory, that should be marginally okay. Marginally. Only 1.4 thrust to weight, so a little slow off the pad, even with 4 here. That actually surprises me a bit. But we're going to run a fuel line from the outside in, as usual. There we go. And I think this will be fine for getting to the moon and back. I mean, that's 6,000 DV in theory. Should be okay. Should be okay. We're going to adjust our staging here. The staging is going to be a pretty big deal here. So we're going to first fire up our first 5 engines. Then we're going to detach our side stages. Then we're going to detach that and fire this engine simultaneously. Then we've got all of this nonsense going on. So I want a stage... Okay, I want this stage here to detach. That gets rid of all of this, and that, in theory, becomes our first impactor, assuming we have the Delta V for that. But I suspect we probably do. This stage is claiming 328 meters per second. One thing we could do is we could bring fuel up here and move it down. It's a possibility. But for now, I don't think we're going to do that. I think we'll give this a go and see how this goes. So these decouplers actually do not need to exist, right? We can get rid of those, and that, of course, means that we need to redo these struts. There we go. So the first round of decouplers would be this decoupler plus all of these. That is correct. The second round of decouples is those, then these, then those. Sure. I think this is actually fine. Ish. Obviously, we're going to need to do something like that. And then the drogues would go down here. But otherwise, I think this is reasonably fine. The only major question I have at this point is, do we have enough oomph in this stage to have this stage be our first impactor? That's the question. So what we really need to do is we need to get there, and we need to kill our horizontal speed relatively close to our seismic reader. That's the goal of this stage. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to include liquid fuel in all of this up here. That will hurt our thrust to weight in our first stage. We may need to address that. We'll enable crossfeed in all of these center areas here. There isn't actually a decoupler here, so that's fine. We'll enable crossfeed here, and we'll have all of this fuel for refueling this tank here, is the idea. Okay. Now, I am concerned about the strength of this initial stage. 1.28 thrust to weight is not amazing. So I think we're going to have to put on some SRBs as well. We're making this into a bit of a Franken rocket, but I mean, we're moving a lot of weight, right? There's no doubt about that. We need to go into coupling. We need to grab the radial decoupler here. Let's go into quad symmetry mode, and we're going to attach it here. We're going... Did that actually attach? It did. Okay. We're going to put in SRBs, Polluxes, Clydesdales. Let's think about Clydesdales. What would that be for thrust to weight here? 1.07. If combined together here, we would, of course, need to have these guys be moved up into here. That'd be 1.69. It's a little bit overkill, which I think is kind of perfect. So we would want to have hemispherical fuel tanks up this way, right? We would run... Is this rocket max size? It is rocket max sized. Okay. So we'd run like that, and then we would run... I would certainly want to bring these guys down a bit. We want these attached up at the top. So we do something kind of like this. Then, of course, we're going to need a fuel line running in like so to drain out this fuel first, and then these tanks, and then the center tank is the way that's going to work. Then we'll need some strutting. So we'll strut these in like so. And I think we should probably strut these guys together and then these guys together out here. And we should maybe even run a strut up here just to be on the safe side. So something kind of like that. It's a little wild. Okay, it's a lot wild. This is a lot of mass here, even with all of these tanks dry, right? And with these tanks in here wet, it's going to be quite a lot of mass. My main concern still remains that we don't have enough power in this stage. We'll find out, though. If we need to run a refueling mission, we can. So that's okay. Jeb is ready to go, and I think we just launched this bad boy. Let's see how it wiggles before we launch. Let's just see how it sits on the pad. If it wiggles too much, we may revert this before we launch. We'll see. I think we should be strutted together pretty solidly, though. Any moment now, KSP. We've got a monstrosity here, I'm aware, but you can load in. You can do it. I have faith. Oh, yeah, that's very stable. I love it. So we're going to go on to kill rot. We're going to throttle on up, and we are going to get out of here just as quick as the lag allows us. Beautiful. So we've got about 58 seconds to burn. Just double checking this here. Yup, that looks phenomenal. Cool. Staging should be okay in theory, and we'll double check it on the way. In theory, this is a one-time event, right? Oh, I'm just now noticing that these stripes are misaligned. I cannot unsee that. Good thing it's going to be destroyed, because it needs to burn in a fire. Oh boy. If I had noticed that, I definitely would have fixed it in the VAP. So we need to start heading on over and getting ourselves some horizontal speed here. We're already, ooh, this is very, very slow to turn. Oh boy, are we full on, we're full on tumbling. Okay, we don't have any control authority here. Let's bring this on around, and we're gonna go to up. I guess we're going retrograde now. I guess we're just going straight down. Okay, so we do actually need fins on this then. I guess that's because our weight... Wow, this is so weird. The way it's tumbling is bizarre. It's not really that out of control, it feels. To be clear, we've already wasted a lot of delta V on the tumble. And it is uncontrollable. Fascinating. I'm just waiting for the SRBs to burn out at this point. That's the primary goal here. Is get those SRBs burned, and then we'll try to recover this thing. If not, Jeb may have to bail out. We'll see. That was certainly exciting. Can we just go on to kill rot, please? Actually, we appear to be maybe quasi-okay on kill rot. We're overheating over this way, which is, you know, exciting. But SRBs are burned out as of now. We're going to get separated. Okay, that's it. Huh. Well, that was interesting. No doubt about that. That was very interesting. Well, now. That's one way to have an abort feature. Huh. I certainly didn't expect the SRBs to take us out that way, but, I mean, I suppose given our directionality, I shouldn't be surprised by that. Given that directionality, that should not be surprising. So the main issue at this point, and we actually had a lot of parts surviving, it looks like. Surviving-ish, anyway. So the main problem there was a lack of attitude control in the lower atmosphere. That's not a major issue, right? So let's just bring this right on down. We'll just splash on down. This is not the way that this is intended to be coming down, of course, or when this is intended to be coming down. That was a very exciting test launch. Oh, apparently there are ferns here. Cool. I guess we can grab our crew report and our EVA report and our surface sample report. Why not? And we'll recover that vessel. So there's going to be some parts out here that I think we can recover, but that was certainly exciting. So that would have been absolutely fine under most circumstances. except that the mass to weight is skewed high. Now, we can get around that without any changes to the craft if we want. And yeah, look at all these. So we're going to recover what we can here. And we can see we're getting some amount of cash for that. Beautiful. Just get all of that recovered. Whatever cash we can get. Is there any other parts around? Nope, that looks like it. So we're going to hop into the VAB here. That was a painful mistake in terms of cash. But we should be okay. I'm not too concerned about that. Let's try this again, but this time we're not going to lose attitude. So what I want to do is I want to hop in here. I want to look at our center of mass, and you can see our center of mass is currently here. So if we put on tail fins in quad coupling out over here, we can see our center of mass versus our center of aerodynamics. That's better. But then what if we were to also put some in here, like that? That'll give us a lot more aerodynamic control. And I'm going to run a quick test flight of this, and I just want to do a stress test of that. This is going to be a flight that we're going to revert at this point, since we know there was a previous issue. The last one was not a test flight, for the record, so I wasn't allowed to revert that. This one we are. I just want to make sure that we're going to be stable throughout the atmosphere. And that's going to be what we're going to test here real quick. This will be reverted either way, and the real flight is going to be next episode. So we're going to throttle up here, and we're going to go to kill rot. And let's see what those tail fins end up doing, if anything. But I think that they will do things. So up we go, and we're going to go again to about 200, but I'm going to stress test this. And you might ask, how? We're just going to immediately head over to horizontal velocity up at 200 meters per second. That is going to let us know for a fact how this is. So up we go. And we're at 150. We are at 200. And over we go. I don't care what direction we're going. Oh, that's fast. Okay. So let's see how we go about getting that under control. One single tumble is not the end of the world. Okay. So now we know. We're going to revert that back, as we said, and I'm just going to ditch the tail fins, and we're just going to say, this thing is top heavy, and that's all there is to it. So what we need to do is we need to ditch the tail fins, and we just got to go up. We got to go up, and once air pressure is no longer a major concern, then we can get our horizontal speed. That's the way this is going to have to go. It's just so top heavy, and that's fine. I'm completely okay with that. That is something that we are going to do next episode. Let me put that out on the pad so that I don't forget. But you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings. And a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Shadowwolf, Mlohan80, Rogue Corvid, Kentogan, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video. And as always, I will see you all next time.